The stable door was already closed when Eli Mercer stepped inside, and for one terrible second it looked like he was the reason it had been shut. A young girl sat on the straw with her knees pulled tight to her chest, wearing nothing but a torn, filthy shirt that barely covered her thighs. Sunlight cut through the cracks in the boards and landed across her bare legs, showing bruises and shades of yellow and purple that hadn't had time to fade. She flinched when Eli's shadow fell over her, as if she expected the next blow to come from him. Eli removed his hat slowly, careful not to startle her. He noticed the door latch first. It had been fastened from the outside. He noticed the iron ring bolted into the wall next, and the short length of chain lying in the straw. Then he saw the marks on her wrist. She tried to speak, failed, swallowed, and forced the words out in a cracked whisper. "My father. 3 times a day." Her eyes flicked toward a wooden post beside her. 3 shallow cuts had been carved into it with a knife. Not random scratches. 3 marks, evenly spaced. Morning, midday, night. She didn't cry. He drinks. Then he comes, and he locks the door. The heat inside the stable felt thicker than the air outside. Eli felt something shift in his chest that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with shame. He had known Silas Whitfield for years, a small-time horse trader with a taste for whiskey and cards at the Long Branch Saloon in Dodge City. Silas had told him his daughter was sickly and unstable. Folks in town said his debts were getting loud, and a girl's name on a deed could quiet them. What Eli saw in that stall was neither sickness nor madness. It was control. The girl's name was Clara Whitfield, 18, old enough to know her own mind, but in Ford County an unmarried daughter still lived under a father's long shadow, and she watched Eli the way a trapped animal watches a man holding a rope, just waiting to see which side of the rope he stood on. Outside, boots crunched on gravel. Silas Whitfield was coming back from the well. If Eli walked away now, Clara would count 3 more marks before the day was over. If he stepped between father and daughter, he would be stepping into a fight that Dodge City law might not see his way. Eli had seen a drunk man ruin a home once before, and he'd hated himself for staying quiet. He wasn't about to do that again. So here's the question that still hangs over that summer afternoon. When a man finds a girl locked in a stable by her own father, does he follow the law or does he break it? Silas Whitfield stopped 3 steps from the stable door when he saw Eli standing there. Silas set his bucket down and he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She gets dramatic in the heat," he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Girl's got a wild streak." Eli didn't answer right away. He stepped just enough to block the view into the stall. Not aggressive, just firm. "She's locked in," Eli said. Silas shrugged like it was nothing. "She runs off. I keep her close. That's called raising a child." Clara didn't move, didn't cry, didn't defend herself. Eli had come for a bay gelding and found a girl instead. He spoke calm, the way men do when they're about to test another man's temper. "I'll take the gelding," Eli said, "and I'll hire her for the drive back to my ranch. Need an extra pair of hands. I'll pay fair." Silas's smile thinned. "She ain't for hire. She ain't livestock either," Eli replied. That did it. Silas lunged. No warning, just whiskey breath and fists. The first punch caught Eli in the shoulder. The second never landed. He wasn't quick like a young gun, but he was steady. He caught Silas by the shirt, drove him back into the stable wall, and the whole place shook with the impact. A horse kicked inside its stall. Dust filled the air. Silas swung wild. Eli kept it tight. One solid hit to the ribs. One shove that sent Silas stumbling into a feed barrel. Clara moved then. Not much. Just enough. She grabbed a handful of straw and flung it into her father's face. It wasn't heroic. It was desperate. And it was enough. Eli reached for the outer latch key hanging from a nail. He unlocked the stall door. Silas coughed and tried to rise. Eli stepped between him and the girl. "If I hear you've laid a hand on her again, I'll come back with the law, and I won't come alone." Minutes later, Eli's wagon rolled away from the Whitfield place. Claire sat beside him, wrapped in an old canvas coat. She didn't look back. Behind them, Silas stood in the yard, eyes cold, already thinking, not about revenge with fists, about revenge with law. And Silas Whitfield knew exactly how to use that. Now, before we ride any farther into this dust and trouble, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea. Settle in and tell me what time it is where you're listening from, because what Silas does next won't just test the law. It's going to test whether Dodge City believes a girl who says 3 simple words or a father who calls it discipline. Eli's wagon carried them out of Dodge City before the sun had time to cool. Eli didn't press her with questions. They crossed the Arkansas River at a shallow bend, wheels grinding slow over stone. And by the time the sun started leaning west, Eli's ranch came into view. Eli handed Clara a tin cup of water before he said anything else. "You're safe here," he told her. She nodded, and her eyes went distant, like she was already counting the hours, that first evening when the sun dipped low and the shadows stretched long. Clara stiffened. It was one of the hours, Eli noticed. He didn't mention it. Instead, he asked her to help him carry feed to the horses. "Keep moving. Keep breathing. Break the clock." When the moment passed and no one came through a locked door, something small shifted in her shoulders. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe a crack in the fear. The next morning, Eli rode into Dodge City and stopped by the sheriff's office. Tom Callahan was inside, boots on his desk, hat tipped back. Tom listened without interrupting. Lock stall. Marks on wrists. 3 times a day. Tom rubbed his jaw slow. "You stepped into something," he said. "I know," Eli replied. Tom leaned forward then, voice low. "Silas filed a complaint this morning. Says you kidnapped his daughter, and men at the Long Branch owed him favors." There it was. Not a fist. Paper. Law. Silas hadn't chased them down the road. He'd gone straight to town, straight to the badge. Tom wasn't accusing, but he wasn't smiling either. "In this county," Tom said carefully, "a father still carries weight." Eli nodded. He understood. Out here, blood often spoke louder than bruises. When Eli returned to the ranch that afternoon, he found Clara standing by the fence, watching the horizon like she expected dust to rise at any second. But she must have felt it in the air, because just before sunset, she said something that made Eli's stomach tighten. "He won't stop," she whispered. And in the distance, far down the road leading from Dodge City, a thin line of dust had begun to climb into the summer sky. The dust line grew thicker as it came up the road. Clara saw it before Eli said a word. She didn't panic. That was the strange part. She just went still, like someone who had spent years learning there was no use running. Eli stepped off the porch and rested one hand on the fence rail. He counted 3 riders. Silas in front. 2 men behind him from town, both the kind who spent more time leaning on saloon walls than working honest fences. No badge in sight, not yet. They pulled up hard in the yard. Silas swung down from his saddle, eyes bright and mean. "You got something that belongs to me," he called out. Eli didn't raise his voice. "She ain't a saddle." One of the other men spat in the dirt. "This don't need to be ugly," he said. Though it already was, Claire stepped out onto the porch. She stayed behind Eli, but she didn't hide. That mattered. Silas saw it too. For a moment his mask slipped. Not anger, control. The kind of man loses when the person he's been breaking stops bending. "You think he'll keep you?" Silas snapped at her. "You think this old rancher wants your trouble?" Eli didn't look back at Clara. He kept his eyes on Silas. "You filed a complaint," Eli said evenly. "Sheriff knows where she is. We can ride into Dodge City and settle it proper." Silas laughed. "Settle it here," he said, and stepped forward. It happened fast. A shove, a swing. One of the hired men tried to circle wide toward the porch. Eli moved first. He drove his shoulder into Silas, sending both of them into the dust. No gunfire, just fists and breath and grit between teeth. Silas fought wild, angry, desperate. Eli fought steady. One clean punch split Silas's lip. Another knocked him flat on his back. The second man backed off when Clara grabbed a fence post and shouted for them to stop. Shouting, strong, and that changed something. Silas lay there, staring up at the sky, chest heaving. "You don't understand," he muttered. Blood at the corner of his mouth. She signed it. Eli froze. Signed what? Silas's eyes flicked toward Clara. Too late. A crack in the story. A mistake. The other two writers exchanged a look. Now it wasn't just about a runaway daughter. It was about paper. About something written down. Silas pushed himself up, wiping blood with the back of his hand. "This ain't over," he said, voice low now. "You want law? Fine. Let's bring it to town." He mounted up without another word. The three riders turned back toward Dodge City. Dust rising behind them again, Claire stepped down from the porch slowly. "He made me sign something," she said, barely above a whisper. And for the first time, Eli understood this wasn't just about 3 beatings a day. It was about land, and land in Kansas could start wars that fists never could. The next morning, Dodge City felt different, not louder, not rougher, just heavier. Silas stood inside the sheriff's office with dried blood on his collar and pride still clinging to his voice. Clara stood a few feet away, hands steady at her sides. Eli didn't speak for her. He stood beside her. That was enough. Tom Callahan laid the paper on his desk, a transfer of land, her late mother's small piece of property along the Arkansas River. Signed, but signed under fear. Signed by a girl who had been locked in a stall 3 times a day until she stopped arguing. Silas tried to call it family business. Tom cut him off. "This isn't raising a child," he said. "This is a locked stall in a chain." Tom looked at Clara. "Did you sign it freely?" She lifted her chin. "No." One word, clear. No shaking, no tears. Silas was taken into custody for assault and for holding her against her will. While the deed was set aside for review, by sundown, the story had ridden past Dodge City, from saloons to church steps, and folks argued over it clear out to the next county. Now listen close. Out here, in 1880s Kansas, the law wasn't always fair, and even today, it still depends on men and women willing to stand up when it would be easier to stay quiet. If there's a lesson in that summer dust, it's this. Sometimes the clock that controls your life isn't time, it's fear. And fear only keeps its power when no one challenges it. So let me ask you, where in your life are you still counting marks on a post? What habit? What voice? What memory? What person? And what would happen if today you chose to stand? Steady, even if your voice is only 1 word strong. If this story moved you, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment and tell me what part stayed with you. Tell me what time it is where you're listening and what state or country you call home. Every story shared here is gathered and retold with care. Some details are adjusted to deepen the lesson and bring clearer meaning, while the images you see are created with AI to enhance the emotion of the experience. If this kind of storytelling isn't for you, that's all right. Rest well tonight and take care of your health. But if it spoke to you, stay with us. There are more stories like this, and maybe the next one will be the one that helps you stop a clock of your own.